Money, the glue that keeps it all together. A means of survival for some and just another tool of control for others. Some of us obsess over it, while others see it as a meaningless, wasteful pastime of the already failed human experiment. While the concept of money, and in an extended form capital, has been debated and discussed since its inception, its link to power should never be denied. While many disagree on whether it benefited our species or hurt them, in the long run, I believe we can all agree on one thing: that money makes the world go round. Recently, our small community has come under friendly fire on a topic as old as money itself. Does that Kurvin scene motherfucker deserve to have more money than me? On the surface, this question feels like it comes from a place of jealousy and contempt, a distorted loser's perspective towards finding excuses for why others seem to have it better off. While certainly many are motivated solely on this petty principle, others point to a greater question. Is the accumulation of capital inside of market forces ethically possible? Or in plain human terms, can you actually get rich without fucking a bunch of people over? Well, dear Tavarishi, that's exactly the topic we'll attempt to neatly discuss right now. I'd like us to explore this entire concept from two different angles. Both of them carry their own weight and the strength of argument, but for different people, either will be more important or less. My personality and worldviews, just like yours, my dear listeners, have been carefully curated by the people we have always surrounded ourselves with. In my case, they fall into two categories: practical motherfuckers, the people who care about actions and not words, and theorists, who base their understanding of the world on how they see it, analyze it, and choose to perceive. Therefore, this video will be cut into two segments: the material analysis of capital accumulation, the more theoretical part, and the practical impact of being rich on YouTube. So without further ado, let's get this absolute fucking circle jerk started. The theory of non-exploitative wealth. The basic principle of Marxist dogma is that the main general problem of the system as we have it today is that it encourages hierarchical exploitation of the capital-owning classes over those which simply toil their life away. Or, for those who are new to this way of thought, simply put, you make more money for your boss than how much he pays you. I repeat, you make more money for your boss than how much he pays you. Take that in just for a second, and you'll understand that for his business model to survive, he'll never be able to pay you the full value of your fucking work. So what does that mean for our little YouTube scenario we've set up here? Well, dear Tavarishi, it's rather simple. Orthodox critical takes on what makes rich people bad aren't that they're rich, but that they have earned their wealth through morally questionable and, least to say, problematic means. A factory owner that makes a few million a year and yet pays his workers the minimum wage with minimum to no benefits is the cliche picture of the modern rich guy. But in a lot of cases, the situation is much more complicated. What should we think about actors or pop stars and rappers, or most importantly, our dear online leftist advocates making bank? So let's take this apart layer by layer. Making money in the capitalist system through your own labor, your own work, your own talent, your own art is capital created by you as the individual. That's how most people see it, and in my personal opinion, it's a more than adequate defense of one's wealth. Now, before you even attempt to judge the virtue of someone who preaches leftist ideals as a class traitor for only having individually amassed wealth, need I remind you that our forefathers of all of our great ideas, Marx, Engels, were as wealthy as shit? Well, to avoid having this called a strawman argument, aren't you, and beg my pardon for being blunt, but also pretty wealthy in contrast to many living in the developing world? I mean, the fact that you're even watching this means you have amassed an amount of privilege which affords you internet. and a phone or a computer. Of course, it's absolutely shallow and disgusting to call someone rich only because they have a goddamn smartphone, but don't you see the larger issue behind this sort of fucking thinking? The working people, be they artists or commentators or workers on the line, should not focus on infighting. If I can just point at someone who makes more money than me through their own labor and tell them they can't be leftists, then what's stopping someone who makes $1 a day from pointing at me and doing the same thing? Hell, there's a word for it, third worldism, and it's right in most of its assertions. Those living in a developed world live in economies which can only exist because foreign imperialized nations, as well as local minorities and natives, are stepped on to allow for its existence. So no matter if you own a business or just work in it, you're naturally a part of the exploitative class by the simple fact that you live in a country like France, the US, Germany, or some fucking backwater like the UK. Now, of course you're saying, but fuck dude, I don't have control over this. How the hell did I just become the bad guy? Well, therein lies the answer to our bigger question. If wealth is analyzed as always de facto evil inside of the way the world works right now, then how the hell can we change a world in which money equals power? If we reject and run away from accumulating wealth in the most ethical means we possibly can, and then redistributing it to people, movements, and ideas, how the hell do we expect anything to change? A soldier doesn't have to like war to be a good warrior. We don't have to like capital to understand that it's a means to an end.
In our postmodern, however we call them, societies, we are obliged to enjoy. Enjoyment becomes a kind of a weird, perverted duty. The paradox of Coke is that you are thirsty, you drink it, but as everyone knows, the more you drink it, the more thirsty you get. A desire is never simply the desire for a certain thing. It's always also a desire for desire itself, a desire to continue to desire. Perhaps the ultimate horror of a desire is to be fully filled in, met, so that I desire no longer. The ultimate melancholic experience is the experience of a loss of desire itself. It's not that in some return to a previous era of natural consummation where we got rid of this excess and were only consuming for actual needs, like you were thirsty, you drank water, and so on. We cannot return to that. The excess is with us forever.
So, this more theory-based analysis of wealth should show us that there's a reason the main problem of capitalism and its freedom-destroying nature lies in how we treat one another. Monetary accumulation is still the only way for one to free themselves of the bonds of capitalism, of the bonds of forced employment and intrinsic, unavoidable exploitation. Therefore, it is incredibly important, in my humble opinion, to remember who puts the shackles on the workers of our world. Those who own the means of production, those who leech off of your paycheck without giving you any alternative, not those who manage to individually save themselves from the parasitic order of things. But now that we've gone through all this mambo-jumbo fucking ideological bullshit, as most of you would probably call it, let's get down to brass tacks. What's the pragmatic reason we should support people in the wider leftist community, even financially? The practicality of YouTube wealth. Well, Tavarishi, have you taken a look at the internet lately? The right-wingers are correct about one thing. We are in a culture war. And sometimes, and it's awful to admit, but it seems like they are more aware of the nature through which we fight it than we are. Ben Shapiro spends tens of thousands of dollars on Facebook ads, which brings him in hundreds of thousands of followers and loyal lapdogs. Prager U literally has the backing and support of an innumerable number of millionaires and spends even more money than Ben on ads all over the mainstream web, accumulating a following which is as easily reachable as it is brain-dead. Right-wing newspapers and TV stations like Fox dominate whole swaths of online media, and they do it because they have a name, but also, more importantly, because they have the money.
Look at this graph.
How are we to compete with organizations like PragerU without monetary support? By being better than them in arguments, you might say. Well, by making more sense, maybe, eh? We are already doing this. Have you watched anything these people put out? It's absolute jebeno brain dead. And yet they keep fucking growing. In the modern field of ideological battle, who makes more sense is not the one who always wins. Because very often, those who make the most sense have the lowest voice, because they have the smallest amount of support of the elites and therefore cannot impact society to the same extent as rapists and pedophiles can on a fucking TV station called after a fucking forest dog. Furthermore, you would be in absolute denial if you tell me that people like ContraPoints, Peter Coffin, or Philosophy Tube don't actively use the money given to them, both to support themselves and their work, but also to elevate their medium to a much more accessible and, frankly said, more enjoyable format. The only thing that can come out of holding some sort of moral high ground and refusing any monetary incentives is the inevitable mute death of an already silent online leftist community. If any online or offline movements are to dedicate additional time and hours to spreading the good word, they have to do what? Take time off their actual jobs. And how do we do that without having them kicked out on the street? We remove their incentive to keep their jobs by paying them more than their jobs could ever give them.
5 years, building a more prosperous Miami. Count on us being here tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. That's because for 75 years you've been fucking everybody. Somebody should do something about this horse. I mean, charging me 10 points on my money. But they're getting away with it. Fuck. There's no loss anymore.
Forget it, man.
I mean, anything goes.
They've been around 1,000 years, okay? They got all the angles figured out.
You know what capitalism is? Getting fucked.
True capitalist if ever I met one.
Uh-oh.
Now, like everything in this bleak existence of ours, nothing is simply black and white. Just the way NGOs as a concept had been corrupted by putting the gathering of funds over actually doing something useful, so can online leftist figures. If the reason why they wake up in the morning and why they do certain things on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis, if all the content they make ends up being motivated by seeing more zeros on their bank account, if their main drive becomes simply milking the online cow as much as possible, well, then we have potentially come to a very serious problem. Because, dear Tavarishi, that's exactly how you become nothing more than what laissez-faire and American-style libertarians want you to be. You become the proof of their model. Proof that all humans are inherently greedy and do everything for money, and that inherently the only motivation for anyone to do something should always come back down to capital. If your drive becomes the money itself, you will inevitably turn to the side of the status quo. You are at risk of becoming that which you fought, because you have far more to lose if radical change happens than how much you'd have to gain. And that, dear friends, makes you not much better than the people making their money off of others' backs. So in conclusion, this multifaceted problem has a simple combo of answers. Theoretically, criticism of people trying to make their way to larger amounts of money without directly exploiting others can come back to bite you in the ass, because there is no such thing as ethical consumption, but also ethical earnings under capitalism. And from the practical standpoint, the left stands no chance to fight the right on its own playing field if it does not adapt to its foes' weapons and turns them right at their fucking ugly pedophile heads. Finally, we must never forget why we truly do this. Not to become one of those who rise to the top on the backs of our own supporters, but one of those who lift others and therefore lift themselves. Thank you for watching, and this wouldn't be a proper video defending online e-begging without me doing some of it myself. I've made a Patreon account in hopes of supporting this channel and giving me more time out of work to dedicate to it. Check out the link below and give any support if you can. If not, I'm grateful for your time and wouldn't mind a few of your, clicks and subscriptions and liking and clicking the bell button and so on. Well, have a great day, Tavarishi, and see you soon.